Proceeds of the sale in recent years of St Loman's Hospital, Verval Retreat in Clontarf and 2 other Dublin properties amount to over 42 million. This funding needs to be made available now to fund new mental health infrastructure if we are to progress a vision for change in the next few years. Funny phrase that, isn't it? This funding needs to be made available. Surely, of all people, the Minister with responsibility should know whether it has been made available. And if not, why not? Where's it gone? Is the Minister really trying to tell us that another promise has been broken and that money earmarked for mental health has once again gone elsewhere? As a subject of public policy, the issue of mental health is becoming quite unique. There can hardly be any other public policy subject anywhere with such a deep disconnect. And it's a disconnect between, on the one hand, the wealth of information about what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, the lip service that's paid to the urgency behind all that, and, on the other, the almost complete lack of political priority. And this disconnect is captured perfectly in the latest government statement, which appeared as recently as last Monday. This time the government was welcoming not the 3rd anniversary of A Vision for Change, but the 3rd report of the Implementation Group, which was also published with as little fuss as possible last week. The government welcome for the 3rd implementation report, they love that word welcome, was in the headline of the press release issued, and the word welcome was used several times in the body of the release. What was the government welcoming? This is what the implementation body said as recently as last Monday. The monitoring group has found that many of the recommendations made in its first 2 reports have still not been addressed. 3 years into implementation, a comprehensive implementation plan is still not in place, and the group is very disappointed with the slow rate of progress. The group recognises the difficulties facing the HSE in the current economic climate, but this does not in any way diminish the HSE's responsibility to implement a vision for change. All these welcoming statements, year after year, you could almost describe them as paying lip service to the lip service, are made against the background of an endless stream of information and analysis that tells us all too clearly what needs to be done. The latest report is called SLAN, another document that gives food for thought, if not worry. I've picked a few shortened examples of what SLAN, essentially a report of a survey, says. Men, it says, and better off people generally, report better mental health than women and poorer people. You'd almost feel like doing Homer Simpson saying, duh. People with low income and low education are twice as likely to suffer mental health problems than those at the other end of the spectrum. 1 in 16 of us, again differentiated by gender and income, report a major depressive disorder. The majority of people don't want any mental health issues they have to be known about. There is a high level of stigma. 1 in 7 of us is frequently lonely, and that figure increases with age. And SLAN is only the latest indicator, well, maybe the last but one indicator, of mental health stress in Ireland. And perhaps because it's based on self-reporting, it's far from the most devastating. The truth, as they say, is out there in all sorts of ways. And I believe it has to be the job of your profession and of people who work on the coalface, like the people who work in Bernardo's, to keep telling that truth, if nothing else, and to keep demanding that the story be faced up to. In fact, I believe that you have to be the whistleblowers of change if change is ever to come. And change there must be. I know it isn't a comfortable subject, but if change doesn't come, then the Mental Health Commission investigation into St Luke's Hospital in Clonmel and its associated St Michael's unit, which was published recently, has to be said, has to be described as undermining any claim we have to be a civilised country. Those of you who read that report know that patients were first admitted to St Luke's Hospital more than 170 years ago in 1835. It was an early Victorian institution then. Doors were kept locked, patients were routinely tied up, nobody bothered about exercise or individual therapy, patients were herded into dormitories that were only rarely painted or decorated. If they misbehaved, they were locked away on their own, and large doses of medication were administered to make them more manageable. The food they were given was poor and badly prepared. Dignity, it seemed, was not a priority in those days. 170 years later, the word that is used again and again in the Mental Health Commission report is institution. St. Luke's is still an institution, still delivering institutional care. Doors are still locked, patients still stay in bare, horrible dormitories, medication is used in huge amounts, sometimes as an alternative to therapy. Restraint and seclusion is still part of the regime. In the words of the report, people sent to live in St. Luke's are sent to live lives that have been impoverished. Respect for human dignity cannot survive a system like that, no matter how well-meaning the staff might be. Though the Mental Health Commission does report faithfully that the only people patients felt respected by were the nurses in the hospital. There is now a plan in place. There is now a plan in place to close St. Luke's, but nobody can say when it will happen, and no money has been allocated anywhere to make it happen and to provide the alternative facilities that will be needed. And there are 19 other hospitals around Ireland, to a greater or lesser extent the same as St. Luke's, still providing the care and treatment that can be described as institutional to around 1,500 Irish citizens. Closure plans have been developed for all of them, but those plans haven't been published. We don't know the deadlines, we don't know how it is to be done, we don't know how staff are to be reassigned. What we do know is that so far, not one penny has been allocated, and until it is, talk of reform and closure and progress will be empty and hollow. In the meantime, one of the things that struck me with most force reading the Mental Health Commission report of St. Luke's was the thought that there is, she may well be dead now, but there was at the time it was written, an elderly lady who sits in St. Clair's ward in the hospital. She's been a patient there for 68 years, since 1941. The place that has been her home for her entire adult life is described in the report as locked at night for security reasons and with little evidence of individual programme of activities linked to assess needs. Her living area is described as dull decor, peeling plaster and extensive exposed pipework. No fixed bed screens or curtains in some areas. The storage space was very limited for residents. Even in the single rooms, this severely limited opportunities to store personal items such as toiletries and to personalise areas with photographs and mementos. 68 years. You'd have to wonder, wouldn't you, what that elderly lady did wrong, what terrible crime she committed against our state to deserve a lifetime in conditions like that. A system like that will only begin to change if the whistle is blown again and again. All the official reports in the world, and we've had lots, won't do the job unless they're backed up by the people who work at the front line. There are few greater scandals in Ireland than our failure to invest in mental health and our willingness to ignore the evidence laid out in front of us. I think every citizen of Ireland needs you, the people who know the system best, to begin to tell it like it is. If you become the whistleblowers for change, change will come. Otherwise, the system will continue to pay lip service to change, and people will continue to suffer, and the intergenerational effects that organisations like us see all the time will continue to damage our vision of ourselves